The following video and very existence of this channel is made possible by your support over on patreon.com/616entertainment. I couldn't do this without you, and I thank you kindly for keeping the dream alive. Want a kick-ass shirt? Head on over to prowrestlingtees.com/616entertainment and pick one up. The WWF SmackDown series of video games made its big debut back in March of 2000, and for many years, across half a dozen sequels, the franchise called Sony's PlayStation consoles home. From the PlayStation to the PlayStation 2, from WWF to WWE, from The Rock's catchphrases serving as subtitles to an eventual switch into brand warfare territory, one thing never changed. For PlayStation gamers, SmackDown was our series. When the Nintendo kids had no mercy, we had SmackDown. When the GameCube and Xbox kids had WrestleMania and RAW, we had SmackDown. Again, SmackDown was our series. That is until WWE SmackDown vs. RAW 2007 hit the scene. A game that would indeed see a PS2 release, but for the first time, a SmackDown title would cross over into Microsoft territory, launching on the brand new Xbox 360. This was the first SmackDown entry to leap into the next generation, and unfortunately for the PlayStation faithful, the 360 version would be the only next-gen release, as a PlayStation 3 iteration of the game never materialized. Oh, what's up, Dan-Dans? My name is Ian. Welcome to another episode of Triangle X Squared Circle, the Wrestling Game Retrospective Series. Now, obviously, today we're going to be focusing on WWE SmackDown vs. RAW 2007, but what may not have been clear is that I will be focusing specifically on the PlayStation 2 version of the game. That may not be what many of you want to hear, but let me tell you why I'm doing it this way. If you frequent this channel, you know very well that a big part of my videos is sharing my personal stories, recollecting the past, drawing from my very real experiences. The fact of the matter is that I'm a PlayStation guy. I didn't own an Xbox 360, so the obviously much better looking graphics of that version, the glistening sweat, the better lighting effects, the richer colors, the extremely detailed high-res textures, they weren't an option for me. It's the same story I told in my Fight Night Round 3 16 years later video. The next-gen version was the best thing going, it was the hottest item on the shelves, and it was not available to me. I was still rocking a PlayStation 2, and hey man, sometimes you have to make do, sometimes you gotta get in where you fit in. Now, I'm sorry if that's a disappointment for you, but I am not sorry to report that the PlayStation 2 version of SmackDown vs. RAW 2007, while not as sharp, while not as pretty as its Xbox 360 counterpart, is still pretty damn good. And without wasting any more time, let's get to it. Let's talk about the biggest difference between this entry, SVR07, and its most recent predecessor. Hell, it's a big difference between this game and all of its predecessors. The control scheme has been completely redesigned. We're no longer using a directional button and circle to get into a grapple, and then repeating a directional button and circle to enact a move. We're not using circle to grapple at all anymore. Hell, we're not even using the D-pad to move our wrestler. All player movements and maneuvers are now tied to the analog sticks. The left stick guides us around the ring, and the right stick is now the home base of the grapple system. Flicking the stick in any direction fires off a quick grapple, while holding R1 and flicking the stick locks your opponent up for a whole new set of maneuvers. Clicking the right stick in, we in the business call that the R3 button, no big deal, performs a brand new ultimate control move. Ultimate control moves allow us to walk around the ring holding an opponent in the air. We can lift them higher, we can slam them down, we can even transition into another ultimate control move. We can really do whatever we want, so Ultimate Control is a pretty apt title. I like to use these to toss dudes off the top of Hell in a Cell. I like to throw jabronis through the announce table.
And to build some momentum at the same time.
On top of ultimate control moves were the brand new environmental grapples. These allowed us to hit the 10 punches in the corner, We can smash our opponent's face off the steel ring steps. Head on over to the announce desk and choke the life out of your opposition with the power cable. Awesome. This new control layout was a huge change. It was a big deal, and I loved using these new features. This new system did come with a price though. It is my opinion that this is where the SmackDown games became largely inaccessible to newcomers. This is where you could no longer hand somebody who doesn't play video games all the time a controller and they could figure it out and have fun. It's not an exaggeration when I say that upon popping this disc into my PlayStation 2, I had to go through the tutorials again. I'm picking up my old save file from November of 2007 here. This is the real deal, and that's the last time I'd played this game up until now. Hand me a controller on the original SmackDown, and I'm right at home in less than a second. But here, man, it's so much deeper and more complicated, I needed to relearn it all. What I don't think needs to be explained to anybody is that there are very few things in this world that are cooler than smashing somebody through a table. SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 finally fleshed out the table match in a way that my friends and I had been begging for years. In the original SmackDown game, we didn't have tables at all. There were tables in the beta version that were cut before final release, sadly. SmackDown 2 Know Your Role delivered the wood in a big way. Oh! Not only did we have usable, breakable tables scattered around the myriad backstage settings, but for the first time ever, we had the option of competing in table matches. Over the next 5 SmackDown games, tables would see nearly zero growth outside of being able to lean them up in the corner. I could do a whole video on the evolution of tables in wrestling games. I had been saying forever that it would be nice to have table finishers. Let the player throw their opponent up against a table and hit a specific table smashing finishing move. And let us stack the tables. Stacking tables on top of each other had been a high spot staple in WWE for over half a decade at this point. There's no reason why we can't recreate this in the video game. And don't leave a comment about breaking gravity and all logic in the prior games in order to pull off some insanity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about an in-game feature that the devs put effort into. Thank you. Would you believe me if I told you that with SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, Yuke's granted both of these wishes? Table matches are totally reworked. We can't just hit a diving move and win in 30 seconds anymore. Now, we've got to wear an opponent's body part down to red before a victory is even possible. But once we've done that, go ahead. Lean that jerk up against the table and hit your brand new table finisher.
Plain and simple. Maybe he's just a little more eccentric than most, but his job is to entertain the fans.
Most wrestlers have a DDT, but Triple H can drive you through a table with a pedigree. John Cena will deliver a devastating FU that sends splinters flying. Lay your opposition across a table, climb up to the top rope, and hit a cinematic splash. So I wrote that part of the script before I got the footage. I tried to do the splash finisher and Kid Cash got out of the way. This game is how old now and I'm still seeing new things for the first time? I had to leave that in. And he also bulldogged me through the table, which is a finisher I've never seen before. I'm still seeing new things here, and that's awesome. Hell, you can head out of the ring and use your table special on the announce desk to recreate Shane McMahon's top rope elbow, a spot that had been all the rage for years and years by this point. But even that's not all. Remember how I mentioned stacking tables? That's right, Dan-Dans. I had been asking for this for so long, and for it to finally be delivered, hey man, I was a happy camper.
I know. It really is like being married to your career.
But Yuke's didn't stop the upgrade train with tables, no sir. Ladders have finally seen a substantial facelift as well. Remember at WrestleMania 21, in the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, when Shelton Benjamin ran up a ladder that was leaned against another ladder? Yuke's wasted no time implementing this jaw-dropping spot into the SmackDown series. And on that same note, the multi-man Money in the Bank ladder match has been added as well. I love that the game can identify what the situation is and launches an attack appropriate for the occasion. If there's someone on top of the ladder, you'll run up and clothesline them down. If there's no one there, you'll step higher and jump from the apex with a splash or an elbow drop, targeting an opponent underneath you. You may or may not have connected the dots on this already, but there are 2 ladders required for you to pull this off. And believe it or not, this was the first instance in franchise history that we were allowed to have more than 1 ladder at a time. Sounds crazy now, but yeah man, if you've been along for the ride since day 1 like I have, you remember how limited those early days were. In the same way that winning requirements in a table match were updated, so too are those of the ladder match. We went from the 2-second jump and snatch, to the jump, hang, pull, to this, an interactive minigame. It's on us to reach for the title suspended high above the ring. Rotating the analog sticks to find the sweet spot is the name of the game, but my favorite part is the high-risk, high-reward system of the reach itself. You can grab the belt with one hand in order to remain steady, but draining the meter to pick up the victory takes much longer. Reaching with both hands will drain the meter much faster, but if you're not lined up properly, overcommitting will cause you to fall from the top of the ladder, granting your opponent a chance to capitalize on your colossal failure. Money in the Bank matches are a chaotic good time, and they're also the only new match type here in SVR07, if you consider it a new match type, that is. We've had ladder matches for 6 years already. This is just a ladder match with more people. And not only are there really no new match types, we've actually lost several match types, as Bra and Panties and Fulfill Your Fantasy were both removed. But maybe that was for the best. So despite several existing match types seeing fantastic improvements, we don't really have any new match types to speak of. We've even actually lost a few over the years. So what else is new? What is here to make up for such a large area of the game not really expanding? Your satisfaction with the new aspects of SVR07 will depend on what type of player you are. We've got the franchise debuts of Bobby Lashley, Umaga, Paul Burchill, the Boogeyman, and more, so if jumping in with new characters is your favorite part of an annualized wrestling title, there you go. If you're big on imagination and customization, Create an Entrance is right up your alley. This mode is deep. It's super expansive. You can put some pretty crazy stuff together in here. Maybe hardcore action is more your speed.
Oh!
You'll be happy to hear that fighting in the crowd is once again on the menu. And no, I'm not talking about the 2D paper people from SmackDown Just Bring It. Ukes has evolved with the times. Crash over the barricade and step into a sectioned off area where there are plenty of weapons to wreak havoc with. Towers of speakers which should apparently have a high voltage warning in front of it. And don't forget about climbing the scaffolding and diving from the top. This was practically the main selling point of the game's reveal trailer. A trailer that was entirely pre-rendered, by the way. Don't you hate this? If I never see a CG trailer again for the rest of my life, I'd be happy. You're trying to sell me a video game. Show me the video game. Now I realize everything is a case-by-case basis, but with SmackDown, you have the game up and running. It's an annualized release, not a brand new thing being built from the ground up. So show me the game, not this. Sorry, this isn't the place to cut a promo on CG trailers. I'll shut up about it. General Manager mode also returns from SVR06, but now the curtain is pulled back much further. Rather than simply putting us in the role of booker and tossing matches together, we are actually charged with hiring writers to craft storylines. Each writer has their own specialty, and you'll want to hire writers that can craft stories that work for your talent. If you've got the Great Khali and Kane on your show, it's definitely worth hiring someone who specializes in a Battle of the Giants story, you know? This whole thing feels a little strange though. I feel like WWE didn't really let fans inside like that, into the nuts and bolts as it were. Hiring writers is about as inside baseball as it gets. I do appreciate the ability to send wrestlers down to Sunday Night Heat or Velocity in the event that they need a boost. Let's say you've got an idea for Carlito, but his standings are not looking so hot. Send him down, get some seasoning, get some momentum, and call him up when he's ready. Newer fans will have no concept of this, but back in the day, WWE played with a ranking system called Power 25 for a short time. There was no real science to it. They'd shape it however they wanted in order to fit what they were doing at any given time, but it's cool to see it here in the game. It's another reminder of the time period SVR 07 comes from. The same can be said about the soundtrack as well.
I got money in the bank. Yeah. Shout out what you drank.
Give up on your life for you's been blessed and kind.
You're staring at the angel with death. Liar, liar, pants on fire. You burning up like David Correct.
So what if you can see the darkest side of me? Feel your taste so sweet. I don't want to be afraid of letting go.
Now, I've been talking about the season modes in the SmackDown games for about 6 years now, dating all the way back to the history of SmackDown. You know what season mode is. It's the ongoing, storyline-based, kind of story mode that accompanies some of the greatest wrestling games of all time. Season mode never really gets old. Most of them are infinitely replayable, and while it doesn't really get old, it definitely gets weird. Let me just quickly say, you'll notice that these clips are from the Xbox 360 version of the game, and that's because Main Event Games has given me the okay to borrow some of his footage for this retrospective, which I greatly appreciate. There's a link to his channel in the description, so go subscribe to Main Event Games and leave a comment on one of his videos telling him I sent you, or lose my number. Now let's get down to business. Why did I say that SVR 07 season mode gets weird? Well, why don't I just show you?
What? You gotta be kidding. I don't do bikini contests. What the?
I know. How about a singles match? I'll see you out there, girlfriend.
She then turns the wand on her partner in crime, Edge.
Better. In fact, let's find out.
چیکار کردی به من؟ چیکار کردی؟ این که صدای من نیسته؟ این انگلیسی نیست؟ چیکار داری به جهنم؟ چیکار داری میشه اینجا؟
Whoa!
We've got a rematch tonight. And like I said, you're going to see what it's like to be in the ring with the perfect 10.
Elsewhere, Undertaker predicts the future.
If you insist on making this mistake, then your grieving family will have no one to blame but you when the inevitable occurs.
No, it's the Mac military.
RVD gets more promo time in the game than he ever did on television.
When you're partners with someone, you expect they're gonna have your back when you're in trouble, you know? Last week, when I got my ass kicked by those two hicks, where were you, dude? You let a redneck with a chair stop you from helping me? Dude, that is really weak. I'll tell you what, though. If you want to keep teaming up with Mr. Monday Night, you better show me that you're a lot tougher than you look.
So on and so forth. I really don't want to talk about all of the different storylines one by one in great detail because I'll play through them on 616 Nitro somewhere down the line. That'll be fun, right? If you're new around here, there are a ton of full playthroughs on this channel, over 200 episodes worth of weekly wrestling game content in a Let's Play format, rather than this scripted retrospective style. Dig into the 616 Nitro playlist and enjoy it! But real quick, let me show you my season mode locker room, which could not possibly be more inspired by Bam Margera. The purple walls, the ornate stair rails, the suit of armor. It's hilarious to look at this again. I don't think Bam was obsessed with Mickie James though. And let me tell you something, I was 15 going on 16 when this game released. And Mickie James? Oh my goodness. Remember those shirts, I'm a Paul Heyman guy? I'd have worn a shirt that said, I'd sleep on the freeway as long as Mickie James would drive the car that runs me over. I'd have worn a shirt that said, I'll bury myself alive as long as Mickie James one day walks across the grass that grows over my skeleton. Man, teenagers are absolutely ravenous. Now, real quick, we do have to shine a light on the negative aspects of SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. There are not many to choose from, but this is a retrospective. We have to be fair. And I'm going to repeat that this is a retrospective. I am not showing you a commercial for SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. I'm not trying to sell you SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. We are looking back on the time that was, with the good, the bad, and everywhere in between. It's okay to recognize the flaws in a piece of art, especially a piece of art that we love. Every once in a while I'll get a comment saying I'm too negative just for daring to point out the shortcomings in a certain game. Even if I've spent 30 minutes up to that point gushing about the game, God forbid I tell you something that's not great. Save your breath. If you want to ignore all the positives up to this point, that's on you, not me. Alright? So, we don't have much to choose from, we don't have much to look at, but let's do our best. Now, like I said, it's not as if there's a long list of complaints to dive into here. Being able to hit a ladder finisher without even being on the ladder does kind of screw up that match type. It's very easily exploitable. There's also some pretty massive slowdown during certain multi-man matches, which is kind of strange. What is this, the Nintendo 64?
This capacity, look out, he's setting up his opponent. There it is, the RKO! Man, it's as fast as it is deadly. Randy Orton's one of the most dangerous superstars in the WWE, JR. Ric Flair and Triple H taught him everything he knows.
Several post-match cutscenes are extremely out of focus. How this slipped through the cracks, I have no idea. It's really distracting. And speaking of blur, take a look at the belts in the locker room. The main plates are alright, but the side plates are as flat as a pancake and are so fuzzed out that they almost look censored. What happened here? This isn't really a negative, more of just an interesting note. But I find it funny that the best wrestler in the game is Kurt Angle. If you don't recall, this game released in November of 2006, and by that time, Kurt Angle was the face of TNA. How do you like that? It takes a long time to make a video game. WWE titles are notorious for having roster cutoffs, where if you weren't on TV by that date, you're probably not going to make it into the game. That's understandable, but where are Paul London and Brian Kendrick? London was in the last game, so why was he cut? Tatanka's comeback run was in full swing here. Where is he? Playing as old man Tatanka would have been awesome. Umaga is here, but his mouthpiece and manager, Armando Alejandro Estrada, is not. Why? That's a huge bummer because Estrada was a focal point in storylines and was on every episode of weekly TV at this point. And one more roster annoyance. We've got 2/3 of the Mexicools here in Psychosis and Super Crazy, but Juventud Guerrera is nowhere to be found. I recognize he was released in early 2006, but Super Crazy and Psychosis were off WWE TV for months by the time this game came out too. Give me all 3 Mexicools, damn it. This is like when Hogan and Nash were in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth and Scott Hall wasn't. It was incomplete. But with that, I'm all out of complaints. Like I said, there isn't much to pick from. So let's flip it in the other direction and focus on some extra cool tidbits. I loved Haz back in the day. I still love his commentary work, and having him here in SVR 07 as a legend is great. The best part, though, is that he's got his old theme song.
Survive if I let you.
How about the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes? Unbelievably, this is only Dusty's second playable video game appearance, the first being ECW Anarchy Rules, as odd as that sounds. Yes, I'm aware Dusty was in WCW NWO Revenge, but he was not playable, he was a manager. I chose my words very carefully. Delete your comment. Coming back to SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, after all this time, I mean more than 15 years later, it's a lot to take in. It's not just a snapshot of what WWE was in this moment in time. If you're anything like me, you also flash back to what your life was like in that moment in time. I mentioned earlier that the footage I've been showing you is from my original save file from my old memory card. I still have it. I look at that date and I mean, you might be expecting me to rattle off crystal clear memories of what my life was like back then. I do it all the time. But this one's different. It's murky. It's unfortunately a total blur of sadness, pain, and negativity. In 2007, my parents were deep into their divorce. My parents always fought when I was a child, all the time, but it wasn't until I was a teenager that my family was officially stamped with the broken home label. I was unhappy at this time in my life, obviously. I remember sitting on the computer in the basement and my mom walked up behind me saying, "I'm divorcing your father, by the way." I didn't know what to do. I was 15, I had no idea how to handle information like this, so I wound up making some really poor decisions and hurting myself pretty badly. I started skipping school. When I would show up to school, I would skip my classes, roaming the halls or just going to every single lunch period to sit with all my friends who were spread across the hours. I didn't do any of my work because I recognized that no matter how many phone calls came home about my refusal to cooperate, my parents were too busy going to war with each other to truly deal with me. This is super personal stuff, I recognize that, but that's real life, man. These are the first memories that come to mind when I look at that date on the save file. And what's the silver lining here? What kept me sane during these turbulent times? You're looking at it. Art can be many things. Art can be inspiration. Art can be your purpose. For me, art was an escape. SmackDown vs. RAW 2007 and video games as a whole, they're works of art. You know when I wasn't thinking about my family splintering into a million pieces? When I was the general manager of SmackDown. You know when I wasn't worried about getting screamed at for skipping school? When I was suplexing opponents through stacked tables. Having captured this gameplay, I revisited this save file, and overwriting this save means that that original date no longer stands. And part of me feels like that marker, that timestamp no longer existing is sad. But another part of me feels like maybe I was finally able to make peace with that awful time and let it go. Maybe this video, maybe telling this story, is the only real way to bring it all full circle. I don't know. What I do know is this. SmackDown vs. RAW 2007 reviewed very well, as expected. The Xbox 360 version wowed fans and critics alike, setting the scene for what this new generation of wrestling video games could look and feel like. As I stated at the top, this was the first time the SmackDown franchise left the PlayStation, venturing into the realm of the Xbox 360. I was happy for Xbox gamers, man. Everybody deserves a great video game, regardless of which console you prefer. And now, they had one. I'm a PlayStation guy through and through, and as a PlayStation guy, I thought it was awesome to see our wrestling games being enjoyed by even more people. Shout out to SVR07, man. The first SmackDown to leave the PlayStation, and my main lifeline to staying above water in one of the worst times of my life. Oh, there it is. That's my Triangle X Squared Circle retrospective on WWE SmackDown vs. RAW 2007. Now, we got real there for a second, but hey, that's what it's all about. And seeing as though SmackDown finally left the PlayStation, I figure maybe this show should as well. I mean, I don't only cover PlayStation games, but I cover a lot of them. So next time out, why don't we do something that I've never done here on this channel? Join me next time for a Triangle X Squared Circle retrospective on 2002's WWF RAW, exclusive to the original Xbox. It is my intention to cover what I'm calling the Xbox Trilogy, and to do so, I'll need your help. This channel lives and dies by your support, so if you are not signed up over on Patreon already, please consider it. It's you guys that keep these 616 lights on, it's you guys that keep these episodes coming out. In order to continue delivering content like this, I need to not only grow this channel, I need to grow the support that's coming in over on Patreon as well. And if you would like to be a part of that, you can sign up at any level you choose. There are plenty of exclusive podcasts and sneak peeks and all sorts of other stuff over there for you, on top of just helping the channel grow. I am very excited for what's to come. I hope you are as well. And until next time, I love ya, and I will see you soon.